Cal. Appreciate it. Let's bring in Democratic Congressman John Garamendi of California, member of the House Armed Services Committee and a frequent guest in the broadcast. Good to see you, sir. Let's get right to it.
Sure.
I know that you heard Senator Lee earlier saying that he doesn't see obstruction. Senator Mark Warner suggesting the Comey firing whiffs of obstruction. Where, sir, do you land on that question?
Well, I think this president is clearly obstructing justice. You take a look at the people that he has fired, not just Comey, but also the attorney in New York City that was investigating money laundering with the Russians. And then you go down through the entire list. Yates, another one. So 3 major players in this process are now off the board. And by his own words, in his own interview, the president said he fired Comey and he linked it directly to the Russian situation. So I think there's something going on here. I think it clearly needs investigation and absolutely has to be done independent of the administration and, frankly, independent of Congress, because it's just too political. And obviously the Justice Department is clearly tied to Trump and to Russia. So,
sir, this rises, in your mind, then, to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors?
Absolutely. We need to investigate this. We have to come to that conclusion. If what seems to me to be obvious is in fact a fact, yes, absolutely. It's a high crime misdemeanor, obstruction of justice. That's what Nixon was charged with, and we'll see where it goes here.
We heard the president, sir, bringing up the specter of the tapes. You mentioned Richard Nixon, so it brings that to mind, all those tapes related to conversations with James Comey. If tapes do indeed exist, what would be the path to having Congress get a hold of them?
Very similar to what happened back in the Nixon days. They could subpoena the tapes. Senator Graham spoke to this issue. If they exist, they absolutely have to be presented to a special prosecutor, if there is going to be one, and certainly to the investigating committees of Congress.
Mike Rogers, Republican, former congressman, Intel Committee chair as well, received the endorsements of the FBI Agents Association. Were you in Congress with him, and do you think he would get swift approval?
I think anybody who is nominated to become the FBI director is going to be a very serious, vetted individual. We're not going to, and this is going to be done by the Senate, not by the House, but clearly there'll be some very intense vetting. And what I really find curious is these interviews. Are they asking for loyalty? And if so, loyalty to whom? To the administration, to the Constitution, to the rule of law? You know, the president danced around that issue. But apparently, there's some indication that he was asking FBI Director Comey to be loyal. He then said, well, to the Constitution, to the people, to whatever. But I suspect the real issue of loyalty is loyalty to the president, and so I want to know what the questions are that are being asked of these individuals.
With regard to Mike Rogers specifically, do you think he would engage the Russia investigation with necessary, thorough vigor?
I would hope so. I would hope so. But let's understand there's going to be intense pressure on whomever that individual is. We know already that the top of the Justice Department is quite willing to write a dossier on the FBI director that is then used as some excuse for firing. That was when the very, very top asked to put together a dossier on Comey. So we know there's going to be intense pressure on that FBI director, whomever it may be. Mr. Rogers has a great reputation, and could he withstand it? Whomever is chosen must withstand it, because this isn't about the president. It's not about the Attorney General. This is really about America. It's about our Constitution. It's about the rule of law, and about getting to the bottom of an extraordinarily important situation, that is Russia meddling directly into our national election. And there's plenty of evidence that men from the Trump campaign were engaged with Russia. And how in the world those two characters got into the Oval Office at the request of Putin, I'm going, what's going on here? What is this relationship that Mr. Trump, President Trump, has with Mr. Putin? This is something that we need to understand completely and fully, because let's be Very clear. Russia is no friend of this nation.
This is all certainly a lot more to come on this topic, sir. I do want to get to health care with you.
Sure.
In fact, here's what the president said on Fox News last night. Take a listen, sir.
I think we're doing very well with that now. That's before the Senate. And I think the Senate is going to come up with some really, really great additions and changes. And we're going to have a plan that's going to be really great. Aetna just pulled out. The big insurance company just pulled out. And we have to come up with a plan because Obamacare is dead.
So is it that Obamacare is collapsing under its own weight, or are we now seeing the effects of the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle it? Which one is it?
It's the latter. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is not collapsing. Everybody wanted to talk about Iowa and the insurance companies pulling out of Iowa. Well, you know why they're pulling out of Iowa? Because of the passage of that awful piece of legislation in the House of Representatives that literally pulls the plug. Right now, the insurance companies are putting together their policies, their pricing for next year. They have to have that ready to go in November during the sign-up period. And so they're saying, we have no idea what to expect. And we do know that Congress pulled the money out for advertising. And so the nature of people being able to understand what's available to them, it's not there. There's no advertising available. California is different, to be sure, because California decided they'd do their own advertising, even though the federal government pulled out. But clearly, Congress is pulling the rug out from under the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and causing the insurance companies to be very unsure about what to expect next year, and therefore they will pull out of the market because they don't know what the subsidies are going to be. They don't know where Medicaid is going to wind up, and they don't know if there's going to be the kind of support that is in the Affordable Care Act and whether it will continue. So yes.
You're giving that is the explanation for why a name brand health insurance company, a huge company, Aetna, I mean, they're pulling out of everything by 2018. That's it.
They have no idea what to expect. And you got to understand from their point of view. Now, listen, I'm no friend of an insurance industry. I was the insurance commissioner in California for 8 years, over a 16-year period of time, and we fought them every single day. But they have to have certainty. They have to understand the nature of the market, and there is no way for them to do so. You just heard the president a moment ago talking about great and wonderful things in the Senate. Well, he said the same thing about great and wonderful things about that awful bill that passed the House of Representatives that would leave 24 million Americans without insurance. They made horrible reductions to the Medicare that also created the greatest transfer of wealth from the working men and women and the poor to the wealthy. That was the tax provisions in it, in any single piece of legislation that's been passed by Congress in anybody's memory. But he loved that. The president loved that bill. Now he's talking about loving another bill that's going to be written. Bottom line is, the House of Representatives and the Senate is posed to do an evisceration of the Affordable Care Act, which has provided 20 million Americans with insurance. They want to do a new bill out of the House to tax seniors, 50 to 60-year-olds, seeing a 5-fold increase in the cost of their insurance. The insurance industry, unsure what's going on. They're creating chaos, and then they're blaming that on the Affordable Care Act. Well, they ought to blame themselves because they're the ones that are creating chaos in the marketplace.
We are talking about what's in the House bill. We'll see what comes out of everything once the Senate gets a hold of it. Representative John Garamendi, it's always good to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Always, Alex.
Thanks.
Happy Mother's Day.
And thank you.